Good afternoon on this kind of rainy, cold kind of day. Thank you for joining us. We have individuals in the room obviously in front of us, and then we also have a number of people join online. It was about half and half. We have 30 and 30 who RSVP to be between those two. So really glad to have you online if you're here that way in person. So I want to just start off by introducing our president and CEO, Kay Englund, and she's going to say a few words. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Angie. Thank you and welcome. So glad that you can be with us today as we gather to learn a little bit together and carry out our series of board fundamentals. We want to make sure that everyone online can participate as well. We've got a great group here in the room. So as Angie said, if you're online and you're muted, if you would do that, that would be great. I can't see. Okay. So again, we greatly appreciate the opportunity to be together and provide this learning opportunity for everyone. Our community foundation has been serving almost our community foundation. So I know we've got representatives from today. Sorry, it's so distracting, isn't it? Focus, Kay, focus. Our mission is to inspire people and connect resources to enrich our communities, as I was saying, throughout our region. I know we've got representatives from quite a few of our counties across Northeast Iowa that are here with us today. And again, we're based, of course, here in Black Hawk County. We're proud to provide not only grant making throughout our counties. We went over 150 million in impacts in our 70-year history this last year. But we know for nonprofits to continue to do excellent work, provide great services, we need to continue to grow our muscles, strengthen our muscles to provide our services. And board leadership is certainly core at doing some of that important work. So today we just really want to say thank you for dedicating time to this important work. We look forward to learning from you and learning from the peers that are here who are giving of their time to be a part of this work. So welcome and please enjoy.
Thank you, Kay. So our board fundamental session today is called Board Success, Lessons from Leaders. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. So everybody has their name tag here. If you're joining us online, if you could please share your name, your organization, and maybe the community that you live or serve in, that would be fantastic. Or if it's mini, you can say that. I just want to make a note that there are waters back here and a few sodas if you're interested. Also, if you go out the back doors, for those of you here, and just keep hanging a right, our restrooms are really placed kind of right back here. So feel free to get up and use those at any time. Same for the panelists, right? You're kind of held hostage up here in the front a little bit, aren't you? We are recording this session for some who may not have been able to make it. And so I just want to make sure that you know that. And for those of you attending online, if you have questions, feel free to put those in the chat. I'll be monitoring that while our presenter and panelists are presenting. And so I will make sure to bring those up and bring them into the room here. Okay. Sorry, I'm standing right in front of you.
No, you're fine.
So I'd like to introduce you all to Dr. Julianne Gassman. Dr. Gassman is the McElroy Professor and Director of Community Engagement at the University of Northern Iowa. In this role, she thinks strategically about the interface between UNI and its community from local to global. Dr. Gassman is also a professor in the Department of Health, Recreation, and Community Services. She has taught in the area of nonprofit management for the past 25 years. And a lot of board teaching in those classes, as I recall. She has served on national, state, and local boards of directors. And her service includes experience as a founding board member and serving organizations during significant strategic shifts. And so Dr. Gassman is going to introduce your panelists to you, and you have full bios in front of you. So please welcome Dr. Julianne Gassman.
So 25 years of experience, which explains why when I got here, it was like, do you have a chair for me to sit down? I can't stand for 2 hours. That number directly correlates to the request for the chair. So thank you very much for the invitation to be here. Angie called me a few weeks, probably more than a month or two ago, and said, "You're always talking about things related to board and governance and the relationships with the executive director. Would you like to be a speaker?" And I said, "Sure." Oh, after a little bit of like, "Are you sure you don't want to?" So I'm really happy to be here, and now I'm really quite excited about it. As I was working on this presentation, and I will tell you in just a minute what it involves. What I realized is there's the best practices how to do something. And then when you're challenged with the task, you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't really make any sense. I don't exactly know. So I was really excited to think about what panelists could share around each of the legal duties. I'll share the legal duties and then really hear from those who are experts and new and learning about how to govern in the nonprofit sector. I hopefully will share information that some of you have not heard before, but I also recognize as I look around the room, and I haven't seen all of those online, but we have a wealth of knowledge and expertise with us as well. So I'm assuming that the range is from seasoned executive directors and people who've served on boards for maybe longer than I have, to those who are very new to the experience. As I was preparing for today, I also realized when I was serving on Lauren's board, it was one of the very first boards I served on. And talking with Allie, it was like, turns out I have a lot more opinions today than I did then. So anyway, so let's go ahead and get started this afternoon. So here's a little bit, and I might have to kind of go like this, or when I'm doing that, then Angie knows to advance the slide. So today's agenda is every time I talk at all about the nonprofit sector, boards, board of directors, any sort of training, I use the opportunity to make sure that we look at the sector at a glance and we understand our numbers and how many. So we'll do that. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how much Iowa needs you to be in this role. We'll talk about the legal duties, and then we're going to have back and forth for most of today with our panelists. So before we go any further, I would just like, you do have the bios in front of you, but I would just like to start with having the panelists introduce themselves. I think it's always awkward when you're just sitting there and you haven't introduced yourself and you're sitting in the front of the room. So Allie, we'll start with you.
Okay, I'm Allie Parrish, and I've been the executive director at Iowa Heartland Habitat for Humanity since December of 2013. So excited to be here.
My name is Scott Mueller. I've been a mortgage lender here in the Cedar Valley for about 20 years. I've been on Allie's board now for 7 years total.
Yeah, maybe
Maybe more than that. I couldn't put the number on it. It's a good thing you can't remember how many years because you're not counting the days, right? So a long time.
Yeah.
Lauren Fink with the Volunteer Center of Cedar Valley, and I have been in my role as executive director since 2008.
Chris Wood. I'm a school counselor at Cedar Falls High School, coach track and field and cross country, and I've served established 3 years, 3 or 4 years, 3 years.
My name is Deborah Hodges Merman. I'm the executive director for the Jesse Cosby Center. I have been in my position since 2020, and I have served on various boards and so, yeah.
I'm Sharita Jenkins. I'm the Director of Community Impact here at the Community Foundation of Northeast Iowa. And I am the newbie here. I've been on Jesse Cosby's board for about 6 months.
All right. Well, thank you all for agreeing to be here. My excitement for this went up a lot when I thought, ooh, what could we learn from panelists? So let's start with what's really important. What are you going to be for Halloween? You haven't given this some consideration. It's on a Friday night. I don't know what that means, but it feels a little bit more exciting.
Picked up my costume at Goodwill on my lunch break today. Just like to put
Are you
that
going
on
to tell us what
record.
it is?
Maybe Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
Oh. Anyone else just want to shout it out?
I am going to do very well with that. My wife's not real happy with me, but she picked her costume without clearing it with me first. And now she's mad at me that we're not doing couples costumes. So I'm like, you didn't ask me. So.
Does anyone else have something they want to shout out? All right. Is anyone considering being a nonprofit executive director? This costume comes with crippling anxiety, a recorked bottle of leftover wine from your last event. I'll share the next one in a minute. Zoom calls that could have been email. Most importantly, not included in it is a livable wage. And I made this one really big. Unreasonable expectations from board members who don't understand fundraising or provide any willingness to open doors. So, hopefully, we can sort of talk about all of this, and for all of our, not only on Halloween, but in every day, being an executive director of a nonprofit or a board member, we can make sure that none of these things, that a livable wage is included and all the other things are not. We can flip those two things. This is my fault, by the way. I did not bring my computer. That's. Oh,
You're running it, not me.
I know. I held it really long. Anyway, boom.
Oh.
So, nonprofit sector as a glance, particularly for those who are a little bit new in your volunteer role as a board member. I think it's always nice to have an understanding of the sector, right? There's 1.6, also 1.8 is another statistic, million nonprofit organizations in the United States. About 10% of the workforce works for nonprofit organizations. We also know, particularly for many of us in the room and online, that the sector is really driven by volunteers. There's about 25% of Americans that volunteer, which is about 63 million volunteers. We give a lot of money in the nonprofit sector. We're fundraising and we're giving almost near $600 billion in 2023. Actually, I think that number has gone up a little bit. The value of the volunteer hour, so thank you all for being here, is near $35 an hour. And that contributes about $167 billion to the economy. I think those numbers are nice to put in front of people because it really talks about how much the nonprofit sector is an economic engine, not just a good part of the sector that helps people, right? But we're really contributing meaningfully and through dollars. I also just wanted to share this report, and I understand there's more recent studies being done on this, but this is a study out of the University of Minnesota Extension, and it looked at the number of nonprofit organizations in Midwestern states, including Iowa, and the number of people in those states. And then it talks about, in part, how many people per capita needs to serve on a board so that our boards are led with the appropriate capacity in the leadership role. And this report shows that, and again, it was supply and demand of demand for volunteer roles. This looked at government and nonprofit organization and leadership roles, as well as just nonprofit. And Iowa actually ranks number 4 if you look at overall volunteer leadership roles in serving in some governing capacity. And only second if you look at just nonprofit organizations, meaning that 1 in 15 people in the state of Iowa should be serving on a nonprofit board of directors if we have an adequate number of people serving in the nonprofit sector in a leadership role. And then, not this room, but in any given place, just look around the room and think, do you think 1 in 15 people are serving on a board? And if the answer is no, it's probably why many of you are serving on multiple boards, right? But it's really interesting to think about the capacity we need at the leadership level in the boardroom, especially when we're a state with not much of a population, relatively speaking. And by the way, this was done in 2020 and the number of nonprofits has gone up, right? We don't think that the population is tracking. So that's probably more like 1 in 14 or 1 in 13 people. So all to say, thank you for your willingness. And also, I think it's really important that we think about how we can grow capacity for others to serve in this role in the nonprofit sector. So just organizationally, I think it's important to understand the structure of a nonprofit organization. So the board of directors is at the top. If you look at an organizational chart, right? You have a number of committees that are formed by both the board of directors, those serving as directors. That can also include other committee members as well, someone who might be on a committee but not on the board, right? And then there is your traditional, typically 4 leadership roles: president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and they typically make up an executive committee. And oftentimes a board will give an executive committee the authority to make decisions on behalf of the board. So I just wanted to put that up there to sort of see organizationally what we're talking about, and what this looks like. The executive director reports to the board of directors, right? So that's organizationally what we're thinking about. To get us started, and before we open it up to the panelists, I want to share about what you legally are responsible for when you start your volunteer service on a board of directors. There are 3 legal duties. The duty of care means that you have to fulfill to the best of your abilities, and to participate and be engaged when you're in the boardroom. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. You have duty of loyalty, meaning that the mission and that organization needs to be what you are most loyal to, even above your own personal interests. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the duty of obedience. You have to follow your bylaws and your guidelines and the laws and the regulations that govern a nonprofit organization. I've been serving on a board of directors now for decades, and teaching about it for a long time. And when I was teaching it in the earliest days, I always thought, well, I get this. I understand it. I think I do this well in the boardroom, but I can't really even remember from year to year. I'm like, there's 3 duties. What are the duties? So I changed it up and I made it easier, right? Here's what I think you should remember. I think you should care like it's prom. You should be loyal like it's your mom. And you should obey like it's a family recipe. And let me just say, I will take credit for care like it's prom and obey like it's your mom. But I couldn't come up with something snazzy for obey, so I asked AI. And I think it came up with something really that sort of fit the theme. And it complimented me on my other 2 analogies. So it made me feel very good, right? So I think that there's a really great way to think about how you show up in a boardroom, right? So what do we mean by each of these? 3 legal duties. The first one is duty of care. I'll let you read the words on the slide, but I'll kind of relate to it in the way that I think about it. For those of you who've ever been to a prom or have children that have been to a prom, what happens when prom night nears? What do you start doing if you're a parent?
Decorating the gym.
Decorating the gym. Oh, that's my job coming up next year, right? What else? What happens if it's your kid that's going to prom? Either you were the kid or you are the parent now. What happens? As opposed to a Wednesday night. What happens when it's prom? We won't make you guys answer the questions. You're going to do a lot of talking in a little bit.
You take pictures.
You take pictures. Okay. What else?
I would start planning everything they're going to be doing.
Okay. And so what? So you're my mom. I come to you and say, I'm going to prom. What's your next thing?
What are you going to wear?
What are you going to wear? Great. I don't know. I haven't picked it out yet. What's the next thing you're going to ask me?
Who are you going with?
Who are you going with? Right? What are you going to wear? Who are you going with? Where are you eating? Who's paying? I'm a freshman. Well, freshmen don't go. Pretend they can't. I don't know. Freshmen can't go at our school, right? How are you going to get there? Is that person have a license? Then it starts. Okay, you got the before prom. You're getting the pictures. Now you go to prom. And every kid goes right home after that, right? Then you, for as many questions as you asked about that, you asked 3 times as many about the afterworld. That's how you show up in a boardroom. You are informed, you ask questions, you don't rubber stamp something. It's like, well, dad says it's fine, so I will too. No, dad doesn't ask enough questions sometimes, right? Right? That's how you show up. You ask questions, you are informed. You make sure that your decisions are based in information that you need to be accurate about it. You don't show up like it's a regular Wednesday night and it's like, oh, I'm going to basketball practice. Okay, bye, have fun. Hardly any questions. You care like it's prom, right? And that's how you show your duty of care. Duty of loyalty is, I don't know, your mom, maybe it's somebody else, but who's your person, right? Who is your person that you're loyal for, right? I always share that my mom tells stories with a bit too much detail. But if my mom talks to you and you want to complain to me about her over detailed storytelling, I am probably going to get a little defensive, right? So I don't mean defend it the way that something's going on and you need to defend it that way, but be loyal, right? Like my mom is my number one, and that nonprofit organization needs to be your number one. If you have a conflict of interest, okay, I run a business and I care a lot about that business, even more so than maybe the nonprofit organizations of the board I'm on, then that needs to be disclosed in a conflict of interest form, right? So there are ways to manage potential conflicts of interest so that if you can't make a decision in the best interest of the organization or those who are being served by the organization, you disclose it in the boardroom. You either refrain from the conversation, and sometimes you're not even a part of the conversation. You maybe not be in the boardroom, right? You have to show up and you have to keep the organization and the beneficiaries your center of the decision so that it's best for them and not you. And duty of obedience. I mean, if you have mom or grandma's secret pie recipe, here's what you do. Thank you, AI. You follow it, you respect it, you don't substitute it, right? And that is what you do in your duty of obedience. You make sure that you have the copy of the bylaws, right? What do the bylaws say? That's the rule book for how a board of directors conducts their business, right? How often do you meet? How many directors can you have? What positions do you hold? A few slides ago, I had the typical 4 executive directors. If you wanted a different sort of a structure, no problem. It would be outlined in the bylaws and it would be adopted by a board of directors, only to be changed by a board of directors, right? So understanding those policies, understanding and being informed about trends in the field and trends in the sector. It doesn't mean that everyone in the boardroom is all of a sudden an expert in the nonprofit sector. But it does mean that you should be aware, you ask questions of the executive director, you do some research when it's appropriate, and you stay adequately informed. And if you think, I have this question and I don't know the answer, you do something about it collectively as the board of directors, right? Sometimes it's a good idea that you either seek legal advice or sometimes you're fortunate enough to have legal counsel on your board, right? So there are ways to think about what skills do we need on our board and then recruiting people with those skills to be on your board, but making sure that you're following and obeying what needs to be followed. Those are the 3 legal duties. And you're like, well, I got that. Now, nothing is complicated. You just go into the boardroom, you make a decision, you follow your legal duties, but it really can get very complicated in the boardroom, right? So, here's what I would like to do next is these are the areas that the panelists have been shared some questions, and we're going to open it up to the audience as well. And I might get crazy and ask you something that I didn't say I would. But there are 3 areas that I'm going to focus on. And then between each one of these, I will open it up to the audience to see if you have any questions. The first one will be just legal duties in practice. The second area that we're going to talk about is executive director performance management. I always tell my students that one of the most important jobs of a board of directors is to hire an executive director. And if you do that really, really well, then everything else becomes just a little bit easier, right? But it doesn't just end at that. What does that look like? Board meeting structure and facilitation, I think, is another key to being really building the capacity of both the organization and a board of directors. And then I also want to know what you want to know, right? I already got hit up this morning by someone, I will not name who, that said, I'll see you this afternoon and you're going to tell me how to get my board to fundraise and something else. And I said, yes, I'm bringing my magic wand. Right? So anyway, you're welcome to join in on questions. So I think I have one more slide to get us to, okay, so I just went over the legal duties, right? So sort of generally speaking broadly about upholding those. I have 4 questions, so we'll see how many we get through. And maybe all of you don't have to answer all of these, but raise your hand if you're like, I think I have a pretty good answer for this one. But I think we should start really broad and say, either from the executive directors or the board members on the panel, what's one thing you wish every board member understood from day one? Oh, Deborah was like, I got it.
That being on a board, serving on a board is a commitment. And so you have to show up. If you're just getting on a board to say, oh, I belong on this board, don't do that. Because it is a commitment. And if you are committed to doing the work and supporting the agency, then the directors needs that from you. But if you're only showing up once every 6 months, that's not good.
I would take it one step further and say not only showing up, but also being able to share with others about the mission of the organization that you're serving on the board for. Be able to have an elevator pitch or just at least tell somebody about what you are doing in your time away from work and family.
I think I would say to just be willing to kind of what she was already saying, ask questions. Don't just come in thinking that you're going to rubber stamp. Don't think you need to know everything yet about the organization. No question is a stupid question. So definitely question decisions and no groupthink.
Okay.
As a board member, I would say you need to be emotionally invested in it too. In my 20-year career, we have a lot of people, especially in the financial world, where, people get on boards because it's a resume builder. It's a cool thing to do, but they don't really care about what's going on, right? They just want to be able to tell people they're on a board. That's not who you want on your board. You want somebody who believes in your mission and what you're trying to accomplish there.
I think it build on what Scott said. I think what Lauren and the volunteer center did really well when they asked if I would sit down and meet it was more of a, we're going to tell you a little bit about our board and make a decision based on that, not on a really like grab and put you on it. It needed to be kind of a meet, right? And so like I found a purpose between what they were doing and what I believed in that really lent itself to like I felt a part of a board that I could make a difference in because I believed in what they were doing because it aligned with my values. And I think that sometimes it's hard, but if you get it right, it's kind of like the executive director being hired. It naturally works really well when people believe in what your mission is.
Can I springboard into the question I was going to ask last? But I think based on what you all said, how do you help board members, either in your current board role or executive directors, move from that I'm the new board member, maybe a little more passive in the way that they engage because they're learning and taking it in and trying to understand, to being active, to being proactive? And I don't know if we all really want to get into this, but especially around advocacy. Lauren, you talked about that, right? Like go talk to people about the nonprofit. or fundraising? How do you move them from showing up to getting the work done? From new board member to like engaged board member?
I think for me, new board member to engaged board member, we have a couple of things in play that kind of helps to, I think, depends on the person, but trying to get them to move through that newness as fast as possible. And also recognizing that everybody's a little different there. So one of the things we do at the start of our fiscal year that works for us is we always do a tour. The first month that of the new fiscal year, we do a tour and a dinner along with our meeting. And so we get the leadership team and the board together to go around and see our projects. We have a very tangible thing to show. So that's very unique to us, I know, but just getting them to engage right away with the mission and have a time with the leadership team and then the board meeting after. And then also every single fall. So right after the fiscal year start, I sit down one-on-one with every single board member and have coffee or whatever and spend an hour just one-on-one with everybody and try to get a sense for, especially the new folks, like where are they at? How are they feeling? What kinds of immediate questions do they already have? Our business model with Habitat is very complicated. So I try to lean in a little bit right off the bat. I guess I should start over. We have a board orientation that we always start with for every new board member as well. So that's at least 2 hours and we spend time kind of going through everything and just setting the tone. But then we followed up with that tour and then I followed up immediately with a one-on-one with everyone. And so I can get a sense for where are you at? What kind of immediate questions are you having each individual? And also just encouraging them, especially if they're new, that just ask questions. You can call me, you can email me, you can text me, you can pull me aside anytime. Like no question is stupid, and just trying to get them to understand that it's a safe space for that. And then I think the rest of the board just helps to support that too, because they're so engaged and so seeing that firsthand. But me just kind of keying into that also and just following up, paying attention to kind of where they're at or how they're engaging or not, and trying to pull them out of that is, I think, something that works for us, I guess. What was the second part of that? Because I had a
How do you get them
Fundraising.
engaged, especially around advocacy and fundraising?
that one's tough. And honestly, I feel like I'm an individualist, so I feel like you don't ask everyone to help you with fundraising because not everybody's comfortable doing that. So I might have a different view on that than some other people. But I definitely have found that some people, they're very passionate. That's easy for them. They really like to help that way. Other people, it's just not their comfort zone. And so I don't bother wasting my time or theirs and trying to make them feel uncomfortable, asking them to do something that's not comfortable for them. However, finding people that are passionate about the mission, making sure that they have an easy way to talk about it and a clear clarity on our mission and things like that is important to me. So that if anybody asks, they feel comfortable speaking about it, but just not everybody's a fundraiser, I think. So
Can I ask a question? When you do your board orientation, do you do it or does your board executive committee,
I do
or is
it.
it you do it?
yes,
Okay.
I do it.
Yeah, I would agree with Ally. I was literally going to start out with, you have to accept that your board's not going to be all salespeople.
Yeah.
I come from a very salesy personality. I'm a huge extrovert, drives my wife crazy. Every time we go anywhere, she was like, you just know everybody. But that's my personality, so it's fine. But we have people on our board who are very, very good at what they do, but they are not going to be comfortable having those conversations. So you just have to accept the fact that you're going to have those that know what they're doing very, very well, and then those that are going to be your salespeople. In terms of, was that a part of that question?
How do
Oh,
we get
how do you get new people comfortable? Since for Ally, for me, I'm just me. So if I don't agree with something, from the get-go, I'm not afraid to answer, to ask the hard questions, to question things and show those new board members like, hey, we're not yes people. Like, even if I agree with what we're going to do in the end, I'll ask questions that people don't think of. And there's times where Ally and I don't agree, and I will, make my voice be heard. I will vote against things and show the new board members that we're not here just to say yes. We're here to make sure that we're questioning the decisions that are being made and that they're for the best of the organization.
Anybody else want to add?
Yeah, my experience was a lot different because when I was asked to come on to the position, it was after a crisis. And so the board was broken. and the agency was broken. So with that being said, there was a lot of healing that had to be completed with the board, with the community, and, you know, to try and rebuild trust and integrity in a bad situation. So I had been on the board previously. And so initially, I was only going to be there for 90 days. And, you know, I really had to take a different approach with the board in that, you know, I personally said to them, I share or take no responsibility as to what's happened prior to me sitting here. Now you have to take responsibility and you have to be accountable, but that doesn't mean that we can't move forward in that. So my role to me was kind of different. It was like I'm trying to heal a board, build it, create a rebuild an agency, create trust in the community. And I had to retrain a board. I literally had to retrain and rebuild a board. So, and most of my board members probably had sat on the board 40 years. And so I don't think I received pushback, but I think that for all that they went through, there was a level of leeriness. And so, I think it was, my experience was just probably really different than most people sitting here. And there were times when I'm like, no, I can't do this. But 5 years later, I'm still doing it. Somebody said, take that interim off. So, but it was really going from titles to really developing a team for the board and myself, building and establishing trust, building a team with the staff, and then really reestablishing and reintroducing a broken agency to the community. So it was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot, but it was a different experience. And right now I can say that I'm really proud of my board because through it all, none of them left. None of them turned their back on the agency. They spent many nights trying to repair and fix and, you know, do whatever they need to do. They went from having 4-hour board meetings, which I refuse to be a part of that, to now we are like, we can have a board meeting within an hour and a half and take care of our business. They've had a lot of board training, a lot. So I think I feel very lucky that they were open to receive all of that. Because sometimes it wasn't real pretty.
What was
Go ahead.
what was like in the last 5 years, what was the moment where you're like, we're gonna be all right?
Oh, I think it was after our first fundraiser. We have an annual black and white ball. And the reception, what I received from the board and their engagement with that, and from the community, I felt that we had definitely turned the corner. And so I think that's where it was. And, you know, we still have our days, but I think that it's been a gradual movement. And especially our funders know my board now. They've become engaged with the community and the people that, you know, provide the necessary tools for us to exist. Because it was a real fine line about us probably not existing for a while. And so they even through it, I think for me, through it all, is that they just didn't fall apart as a board. And I don't think a lot of them knew a lot about board development. But I'm proud of the fact that they stayed and would open themselves up to be taught.
Karina, not to put you on the spot, but you're the new person on that board. So do you just have any reflection or additions to what Deborah just said?
Yeah,
She went back a ways, but you're kind of new in the situation.
I actually love the energy on the board. So being a new member, and I can tell the training that's going into making sure that I understood my role, understanding that you have a voice here, understanding we want your engagement. That felt really, really good. And it felt like the board was strong enough that I could really make an impact on the board. Thank you.
And don't you think it's all about finding, Ally alluded to it a little bit in your like one-on-one conversations, but finding their niche of your board members, like where they fit and taking their time and their, you know, their talents that they have and skills and figuring out ways to really put them to work, really. I mean, I think, Chris, from the perspective of bringing you on and you diving right in with our large fundraiser and the role that you did, I think it's a good way to get board members more involved is making sure they're tasked with something and not just showing up once a month or whenever your board meetings are just to accomplish being on the board, but giving them something to do.
It's different when Lauren says, would you like to, or Chris, I need you to. Like, I do feel more of like, okay, she needs this from me rather than kind of leaving it open-ended. Does anybody want to help with this? So like, that sometimes people may feel pigeonholed, but for me, like, I was like, okay, there's a need there that she feels like I can support. I should take initiative on it.
I had to really support my board members because a lot of people really didn't want to be attached to anything at that point in time. And so I let them know you're being handpicked. You're being asked specifically to be on this board. That should be an honor. And so I it may be illegal, but I handpicked every one of my board members with intent. They all have a purpose. They all have gifts. They all bring talents. And that's why they sit on the Jesse Cosby board.
Well, and it's not illegal, especially when they're serving as directors to benefit the organization in a way that advances the mission, right? They can show up in that boardroom fulfilling that role. That's what you need. This next question is gonna share what you can, and I don't know if any of you have examples, but can you share a time when the board had to navigate a tough decision that tested one of the legal duties?
I hate to.
Duty of care, duty, and again, this is a share, but has there been a legal duty that has been?
Well, I don't know if it's a legal duty, but the board chair, she probably had been on board chair for 40 years. And, the center is her family's inherited. This is her family. And I think she felt a sense of obligation that, and I know she felt that, somebody from her family should always be on the board. And I'm like, well, that's not in the bylaws. It's not in the articles of incorporation. And we need a change. And it took me like a year to really have everybody else to understand that. And I don't even know if they truly understand it, but so we created past chair. And then it got to be, well, I want to be a voting past. No, then you might as well stay on there as a board. So there was a lot of that, but I get it. That's her family's name.
Right.
That's there. I get that and I understand that. But on the other hand, change has got to occur.
Well, I think I'm hearing two duties there that you upheld. One was duty of loyalty. nonprofit organizations are not owned by people or families. They are public institutions to be governed by a board of directors, and that can get difficult when you have any founder, right? When you have any founder, they have a connection to that organization, but it is a public entity. And I think that you show loyalty to the organization's ability to continue to fulfill its mission effectively, right? Your loyalty was to the organization, not to the founder or the family. And this can apply beyond just this one organization, right? And then also to duty of care, right? Like if you're going to care for this organization, you have to ask questions and then make decisions that are in the interest of the organization. They can be tough. So that's why I like this, because there's these 3 duties, but fulfilling them comes in many, many, many forms. And it's up to the board of directors to take them in the many ways they need to be executed and follow through accordingly. So to me, that's care and loyalty, right? But it was tough love and tough conversations, but it was appropriately duty of care and duty of loyalty. Yeah. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you all have like term limits on your boards? We have like a 3-year term, but you can serve that for 20 years if you want to. So.
Yeah.
just a question.
We have 3-year terms, but you can serve 2 terms back to back, but then you have to be off the board for a year before you can come back on if you want.
And we do not, we have terms, 3-year terms, but you can hang on.
Sure.
I think, I know they had terms, but people get very lax and comfortable. And so, and I think at some point that they may have stopped recruiting and was comfortable with everybody because they worked well together, I assume. But yeah, when the youngest person on the board has been on there 10 years and terms went out the door a long time ago. So, yeah, but we're working our way back to that. So some of the longer term members are no longer on the board. And it's okay, because we're still in rotation to bring new people on and get some more of our most seasoned board members off with they want to come back in a couple of years, that's fine.
Do any of you, to that question, have any tips and tricks for succession planning on the board of directors? So you have turnover, you both don't, but do you have, even when you have longevity in your board members, somehow, eventually, we're all not going to be serving on a board of directors at some point, and we need to think about the next. So any tips and tricks for succession planning for any of you? Is it
On the board,
automatic,
or-
right? You sort of have automatic,
already
like,
have ours.
because you have a stop, but
Yep.
the other two, if it's not automatically in board term limits, how do you think about rolling people off and getting people on, or getting
We're working on that
Mhm.
because I remind them that I'm not on there forever. I'm not going to be the executive director forever. They need to have a plan so that I can go back into retirement.
5 years ago, how'd that work out?
But yeah, we have a lot of discussions. So for me right now, this is really them rebuilding and re-educating themselves in a lot of areas. And so we are taking small steps, but definitely there's some planning in that direction for the future.
I would say, well, I mean, your board of directors are your volunteers within your organizations. And so I do spend a lot of time just in my day job connecting with organizations and providing support around like how to think about succession planning for volunteers within your organization in general. So maybe the removal of a volunteer or, planning for what it looks like in the long term. And so I think, at least for us, it ends up being a lot of conversations. I also think we've done at the Volunteer Center a really good job of kind of naturally seeing the progression that people have within our organization serving on our board. They come in, they serve, 2 terms maybe, and we start to see that their interest not as waning in what they're doing, but they're ready to try something different. And I kind of liken that to the fact that the Volunteer Center partners with so many different nonprofits in the community that hopefully we're opening eyes for the different experiences that are out there in the different organizations, for people to be a part of. But also we tend to see turnover within the same organization. So for example, like a member who is employed at Viridian Credit Union may spend 2 terms with us, and then they onboard or help us find a new individual from Viridian Credit Union be a part of the board as they're ready to roll off. And so we do see that, not saying that Viridian, for example, is a must on our board, but the partnership that's there, it's very helpful. But there has been a natural progression. I don't know if that's right or wrong to have or not have term limits. It's what works for us at this point in time. But it's a learning process too.
Well, I think we have a lot of different examples to think about this, right? Like you have term and term limits, which is sort of a flow of succession planning that's built in. A situation where you think about succession planning by the partners that the agencies represented by who's on your board, and thinking about that in partnerships, be it Viridian or hospital or UNI, right? When I rolled off Lauren's board, she said, all right, who else at UNI would be a really good member of our board, right? So thinking about it in that way, and then thinking about the benefits of longevity with board members, and what you came through sounded like longevity was maybe the secret sauce to survival. But then also now thinking, okay, how does that look like in 5 years? And I'm thinking, Sharita, I'm looking at you like you're in the 5 years and 10 years, right? So the next 2 words on the slide that you all can't see, but I brought it up, is how do you talk to your board or to new board members about overhead and compensation? Maybe I'll just leave it there before I add more to it, right? The world thinks that you should have no overhead if you're at a nonprofit organization, right? And I have a couple slides on this next. Maybe we can skip them. And I think a lot of the world thinks that being paid adequately or a lot, as described by some, is inappropriate in the nonprofit sector, right? And, okay, I said I wouldn't talk, and then I just kept talking. I think if we're solving the world's most complicated problems, we should compensate appropriately, and it recruits the most talented thinking about those things. So any thoughts about what those conversations, how you tee them up if you're an executive director, or what they look like in the boardroom? Because I think they're important conversations.
I feel like I'm trying to think way back about the progression. I feel like I've been very blessed because I've had a very supportive board throughout all of my time at Habitat. They also probably feel, I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you feel like you're running to catch up with me a lot of times. So like I'm definitely like running fast a lot of times and thinking big and imagining new things and stretching us to get there. So I think that they've been very supportive of me in that, and I think have always paid me very fairly. I've never had to ask for different compensation or anything like that. I feel like they've been very respectful of me in that sense, and certainly I lead that charge. In I demand it, I guess, for myself without saying it. I mean, by just working incredibly hard and appreciating what they give me, but also by asking or really paying my staff incredibly, I think, well as well, trying to show up for my staff and showing the board that I'm doing that and that we're trying to stretch to make sure we can pay for that, but being careful with hires, of course, and all that kind of stuff and new positions. But I don't know what it feels like to be a board member, but for me, I'm very committed to the staff that I have and making sure that we're paying a good wage and a fair wage and not having a scarcity mindset and thinking, well, we can't possibly do that, but I also have a staff that runs hard and fast and steps up and works incredibly hard and pushes themselves. So, it's kind of the culture, I guess, that we have. I don't know how you would say.
I mean, with our board, we have a lot of, business professionals. We have people who have long-term HR experience, things like that. And, we all realize that turnover is more expensive than anything, right? I mean, the last thing you want is, your good people leaving for, because you didn't pay them 3 or 4% more than you should have. So we definitely take that to value. And at Habitat, we've been very fortunate that the tenure of our employees is pretty phenomenal. We have, outside of the retail side of things, the restore, we have virtually no turnover. And that's definitely a testament to Allie's leadership and the board and her, determination to make sure that they have fair wages, good benefits, and if they want to stick around, that there's no incentive to look elsewhere.
And a testament to the board to be able to retain leadership that, right? Like it's quite cyclical.
Yeah, and we didn't have that when I started. We were definitely a lot smaller when I started. We had 5 employees. Today we have 35. It's not been something like we just jump in with all this really high pay. In fact, what I adopted, I guess, or inherited or chose was a team that was pretty burned out and not being paid very well, and like some extreme frugality, I think, across the organization, and I think with good intent. But people were tired and they weren't feeling valued and they didn't have, some of those things. And so it was really a commitment that I made that we're going to figure out how to pay people well and we're going to make sure that they feel valued. And we've really kind of leaned into creative benefits is what I like to call it, just ways that we can, provide incentives or provide value add that doesn't necessarily always have to come in terms of pay. And burdening an organization that way. So it's been a progression. It's not like we just jumped into that either. So
I think the early board was very big hearts and
Yes.
very belief in the cause, but virtually no business background, no
Right.
financial background. They didn't understand like we have to retain these people. The people just don't come in and are successful and are valuable. And so that was a pretty significant transition for our board at the time.
and we operate it like a business, like we are a business. We might be a nonprofit mission and not out for profit, but we need to make a profit, number one. And we are a business. So we treat it like a business and we operate like a business. We don't discount our value as employees or as individuals just because we're nonprofit.
Right.
Yeah. And
Just
board is
to-
that way as well.
Just to add to what Scott said, once I'm just going to add his comment and then I'll take your question. Just a testament to what you said. So I teach in nonprofit management leadership, and I'm a student in the room. Over the beginning parts of a semester, I always learn that they're in nonprofit management or leadership because they want to change the world and they want to give back. And they don't like numbers. And they don't want to take an accounting class and they hate math. And therefore they're paying no attention to numbers, but I want to give back. And I spend a lot of time talking to them about numbers and being confident in wanting a fair wage and a fair salary. And then I give them ways, and we can skip a couple of slides that are after this because it's all about that, about how to advocate for a paid internship and all of those sorts of things, right? Because they tend to say, well, I'm not interested, and then don't really understand the impact of what they're giving up because they don't care about numbers or think about the budget, right?
Now to piggyback, but
Yeah.
if you're going to ask for it, you need to earn it as well.
Yes, yes.
Like, because that's the one thing that does drive me a little crazy is new
Yes.
people coming in and thinking that they deserve a high wage, but they're not willing to work for it. And this is
Right.
the hardest work you're ever going to do is this kind of work. And you need to be willing to put in the time, put in the effort, put in the blood, sweat, and tears, care about it more than anybody else, do the hard thing. It's not just a slough off job that,
Oh, right.
because the mission matters that much, so don't come in expecting it, work hard and then expect it is what I would say.
The rate I give my students is $9 an hour. Yeah, at the
No, but,
intern,
you
at
know,
the intern
yeah.
level, but you have, right,
Yeah.
right, like you can't make demands.
Yeah.
Others about the compensation overhead piece.
For me, I knew going in, and I'm not being, they couldn't afford me.
Mhm.
Right.
I knew that going in, so I didn't go in with high expectations. I went in with a commitment to rebuild an organization that I thought was important to our community.
Yeah.
And with that being said, I was fine. But I also forewarned them that you're going to have to start to learn how to pay people what their value is. And so we started, like Alex said, we started with staff. And, you know, we continued until I felt the staff was earning a livable wage. But I'm my own best advocate when it comes to my pocket. So, you know, and so I didn't receive a lot of pushback. I think it was a lack of not understanding what this looks like. And I work hard. This was supposed to have been a part-time job that I'm doing 80 hours in a week. So you need to understand if you want things to be right and you want an agency that's respected and valued, then you've got to put somebody in place who can do that and have that same value for themselves and the work that they put in that. So I knew, like I said, I knew coming in they couldn't afford me, but I was okay with that because part of my commitment was to try and rebuild an agency that I loved. And I was doing it for our community. And so we've continued to work on that. You know,
Well, and I think, you know, another statistic that I didn't put up is that of that, you know, 1.6 or 1.8 million nonprofits, most of them are small with few nonprofit employees, much like not this end of the table, but that end of the table, right? And there is important conversations to have about the value of the leadership that is needed to run the organization and the ability to afford that person. And when those two numbers aren't near each other, how do you work to pull them together, right? Because if you get to retire someday, the next person the board needs to be able to afford. Right. So what does that look like? And we put it together in a lot of different ways in the nonprofit sector, right? But trying to build but having the conversations in the boardroom, board members that aren't from the sector understanding that this is something important in the nonprofit sector, just like it is in the for-profit sector.
And I think annually, year to year, as you start to have those conversations, is the continuity of for staff to feel like the board that is over, turning over on occasion, and you have a different leadership structure every year with new faces, figuring out how to retain that continuity in the structure of how you're thinking about wage increases and other benefits that come from. Because I think that's a tough one for organizations. And I think even one that the Volunteer Center Cedar Valley doesn't really have a necessarily like an actual model other than the historical knowledge of what's happened year after year before. And so I think it's an important thing for organizations and leadership to consider.
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. Thank you very much, Alex.
Could you give some concrete examples of those sort of non-traditional benefits that increase loyalty and staff retention?
Well, one thing we shut down between Christmas and New Year's.
yeah.
So that was kind of I don't know, it's more and more starting to do that kind of thing now.
Time on.
It can be time off. And I think other things like, it's let's take all the staff out for lunch, it's like stuff that definitely costs money, but it costs less money than if you're just gonna give everybody, raises. It's time off. It's time, like full day retreats. We spend time doing retreats together. We give out, one time, we got a fairly significant grant that we had been working on and had a really good bit of success with that. We had a gift card party. I gave everybody gift cards, instead of a salary increase, I might give a bonus or, something like that, or just give everybody a gift card to thank them for all their hard work. And I think just culture is something we work on a lot. So just having just different ways to spend time together, having a game night, having a, whatever stuff that just makes people feel good about working for the organization. In just different ways, I guess.
Do you do that during
Sabbatical, yeah. We're doing a sabbatical now at 10 years. So everybody that works 10 years gets 30 days off, or a month off. Just standard, things like that. That's like creative, I guess, in my mind, that not everybody's always doing. So
Extra PTO in general.
yeah,
Annually.
more holidays, instead of fussing over whatever extra day, just
Early
give them
out
the day
summer
off,
days,
yeah.
like summer
follow-up
Fridays.
questions?
I think have been helpful for us.
sorry, what?
Can I ask just a few follow-up questions? Those game nights and things, do those happen not during working hours? And if so, do you pay your staff for those? Those bonuses, is that a percentage? Is that annual? Do you have staff that can expect every holiday season, $100 gift card? So just sort of those.
We do a holiday bonus every December. That is fixed. Basically, it's based on leadership responsibilities, that kind of stuff. But at different levels, it's a fixed amount. It grows a little bit over time with inflation, things like that. That is not performance based. That's just, hey, it's time of year that we know is, expensive for people, and we thank you and give everybody a holiday bonus. At the end of the fiscal year, if we've been hitting our marks, we are eligible. The team is eligible for an additional bonus, cash. Other than that, the game night is after hours. Staff are not paid to be there for that. For fall retreat, we're doing on Tuesday, all day retreat, that kind of thing. That's paid. We do a tour and fun day in August. So we do a whole staff tour and then we go out to Palmer's or something like that with the team. That is paid, and including that might be overtime for some staff because some staff don't work on Mondays. So if it's on a Monday or whatever, we have to figure out all that. So we do try to just take care of people, like, what's reasonable. Like if it's not required to come to a game night, so you're coming on your own and you're not being paid to be there. But if it's like a tour day or something extra like that, we would like everybody to be there. A fall retreat, everybody's paid to be there.
Thank you.
Allie is really at the high end of all of this. I'm really at the low end because, my staff, a wage increase was a lot for them.
Yeah.
And then to receive PTO was even more appreciative to them. We don't work on Fridays. So, and we celebrate birthdays, so they get their birthdays off. And, we are, for some of them, this may be some of their first time work experiences. And so I'm just trying to teach them value, self-value, and how to advocate for themselves. So we are at the real low end of all of this. So anything that's received, they appreciate. And we do the lunches, we do the spontaneous lunches, if it's like really hot out and it's nobody's been in the door in the last 2 hours, we may shut down an hour early and go home. So we celebrate, like you said, cultures. We celebrate a lot of things, but you can see that sometimes money is important, but sometimes people's time and value, and you give them back to their family, is even more significant, and they appreciate that even more. So we have an annual barbecue that's our fun day in July, and we invite people to come in and staff gets to hang out and not answer phones and do that kind of stuff. So those are some of the incentives that we do at no cost. We have to really look at the at no cost thing. So it's really an extreme from me to Ally. So
I will piggyback on that, that culture a lot can take you a long ways over income. I mean, my previous employment, I took a significant pay cut to get out of there because the culture did not align with my values. And I've never regretted a moment of that decision. So if you can make a positive culture environment, people will stick around for that because you don't know what's up on the other side.
Most people that start with our region or organization take a pay cut to work for us. So it's the same kind of idea.
Right.
It's like, and that it's been a progression again over time. We weren't doing that. It was just little things here and there. And it felt like, and the flip side is sometimes it creates entitlement. So then you gotta flip that around and be like, hey, remember the days when we had none of this? Like, oh, you weren't here. Okay. So, yeah, it's not all sunshine and roses by being generous either. So yeah.
Yes.
I just have a question. I'm just curious how many of the panelists, their organization is it's a board governance type of a organization, or is it an operations board? Because there's a big difference between the two. And I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between a governance board and an operations board. So just curious about that.
we went from a governance, from an operational to a governance. Because before I came on board, they had that interim time where they had no one, and the person that they did put in there, I don't know how experienced they were, but again, they were in crisis for like a year and a half. They were losing funding. They were in a serious crisis. So they had to do a lot of things that they probably wouldn't have done before. So they went from an operational board now to a governance.
And I would say we are more on the operational side of things, being such a small staff. I rely on my board members to really support, and I call them up, email them, ask them, to support me in very specific ways. That said, they obviously have, the ideas of the governance of listening and just providing input and support, even though we have made decisions at a staff level to take. I mean, the executive director is leading the organization. So I'd say we are much more on the operational side than I think what you mean between the two.
We're governance. I remember, I think it was probably 3 years in, and we were at a strategic planning session, and one of our board members said, we need to let Ally handle the operations, and we're just going to be here to support her, and it was like a turning point, I think, for us, where they felt, and I was new, so, eventually they just let go. And
I think sometimes it's a continuum, right? Like it isn't like you are one or the other. Sometimes there's an evolution from based on need, the board is running the organization and there isn't any paid staff to, we're going to really allow the operations to be directed by the executive director, and we're going to govern this organization. Yes, go
I
ahead.
have a question kind of along the same lines. Like our board is it's governance, but almost all our board members volunteer within our organization. And sometimes it's like the Ghostbusters don't cross streams. And so I just want to ask, like, have you had to navigate where sometimes a board member may forget that they got their volunteer hat on versus their board hat when they're volunteering, or vice versa? Have you had some issues potentially? I would just like to hear your ideas around how you navigated that. I've had to navigate it a couple times, so. I don't know if I handled it very well.
like, meaning they might have opinions about things.
Well, I would say, like, I may have a board member who's volunteering and they're asking about operational stuff, or an employee says something to them that probably should, and a good thing is that the board member said, hey, you should talk to the director about that. So those kind of things.
I'm very fortunate. I feel like the board probably that was earlier on for me where they would have more opinions about things or maybe cross that line a little bit more. Again, it was actually helpful that a board member kind of just stepped up and said, hey, we're gonna let her run with that kind of thing and advocated that way. So I think it could be a progression too over time if other board members continue to have that same mantra, like, hey, we let Glenn make the decisions, you know, like, and we're not involved in those kinds of things or whatever. If it slips, especially at the board meeting level, I feel like, or at strategic planning or something like that, having other board members advocate was helpful for us, I think.
It was, for me, the board was very direct in that I'm the day-to-day. I have the final answer when it comes to them. I think we're kind of doing a little backsliding now because I had one of my staff say last week in a training, well, I don't understand why we can't talk to the board. Okay, because it's not appropriate. So, but you know, again, my board is active. They come in, they interact with the seniors downstairs. They come up, they say hi. But I think they have real clear lines that at the end of the day, they will sit with me and I don't hide anything from my board. I'm very open and very direct with them. If things is not good, then we have a conversation about it. I don't, if it's my fault, it's my fault. I'm gonna take the ownership for it. But if it's causing chaos, then we're gonna discuss it so that my board is aware, so that my staff cannot backdoor me and go to them with information. We're not doing that. You're going to be aware so that I can feel like I've got the support that I need. Because nothing feels worse than somebody backdooring you. And so I think that it's clear, but you know, they get unsettled. And so this way is, so I'm going to talk to a board member about this and that. Okay. I think you have waves of that. I think, you know, there's just times where they'll try it.
That is a lovely tee up to the next area that I think is important to think about and to focus on. And in practice looks so very different depending on if you're a small organization or a large organization. And I'm just going to stick to my questions because I think too, it's interesting to think about, Deborah, what you were saying when there's a really great and strong executive director that knows what they're doing in their position, and an employee just doesn't like an executive director's position, versus not demonstrated by here in this panel, when you have an executive director that maybe isn't a good fit in how that plays out over time, right? So all of that to say, can any of you speak to your annual evaluation process? And then we're going to follow it up, not just for the annual evaluation, but can any of you speak to what a strong annual evaluation process looks like?
Is that for an executive director or
Yes.
staff or who? Okay.
No. For board, all of this is really the executive director between the board and the executive director. So annual evaluation, I actually think oftentimes, in my experience, the evaluation process for staff is strong and stable and has a flow to it, right? I think my experiences on a board is sometimes it doesn't even happen. You got a great ED and they're doing a great job, so we don't even annually talk about it. And other times there are processes in place. So I think that is an area that in practice isn't always embracing best practices. And I think there can be a lot of benefit for it. The best thing is hire really well so the ED is doing a great job, right? But still, there are all sorts of things that an ED needs to be successful. And I think it's built in the annual evaluation and ongoing support and processes. So that's why I want to spend a little bit of time on. So just hopefully minimally, there's an annual evaluation process. I'm starting sort of big, and then I have some questions to dig a little bit further.
So that's been a progression for us as well, I would say. Also, one thing that's a challenge to that is that sometimes your president's going to change over. So if you have a different president, and for a while, every year we maybe had a different president, so they might if they're not speaking to each other, then, at some point you're asking for your own evaluation, which you don't ever want to make your executive director ask to be evaluated by you. I think you guys need to have a clear enough process that they don't have to ask for that. So I used to ask for it, or even my director of finance or whatever would prompt, or something if things weren't happening. Now it's much better where every single year, there's much more of a process and personnel committees involved and, my finance or internal operations directors involved. But having some continuity around the form that's used. So again, different presidents might think, oh, I like this form or I like that form, or I have a new idea or something. I just think making sure that there's continuity there, so that the same kind of form is happening, or at least an agreement on if a new form needs to be used for some reason, let's discuss it or whatever. But making sure that it's done consistently, the same way that the board gets the same kind of opportunity to weigh in. So we have a form that's filled out by whatever board members are willing to fill it out, essentially, that evaluates me. Similar questions and format are used year over year, and then the president leads that effort. So, and then works with the personnel committee or executive committee or what have you. So definitely don't make your executive director ask for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the board's responsibility. So, and we like to be evaluated. We like to know if we're doing a good job, or what you guys want us to do.
I would say ours is really similar. I think you've been through the cycle a few times, but usually executive committee sends out, I don't know, it's like just a Google form usually that goes out, but it has been the same year over year. For the most part. I mean, I think there's little tweaks depending on who's leading, but then I get together with usually the board president, maybe the vice chair, and have conversations and talk about goals in the future. And maybe Allie likes it more than I do. It's not my favorite time. I like to hear, I like to have the conversations that we're having. I am a bit of a perfectionist, and, it pains me when people don't view the scale. Sometimes for some people, it's really hard to give fives, and I just want fives across the board.
I think that's important though, because we've had board members that feel the same way. So it was I don't know if it was added recently, but after the president would kind of sit down and ask for feedback from the board, then we would come together. So it wasn't just a form reported, which I think is important to have some vocal opinion and conversation, so that when the president goes to Lauren, you can voice that and you're not just reading forms when everybody's 5, maybe a 4, right? So I think that was super important. Just there's not a whole lot of dialogue because she does an amazing job for us, but that it was important for those people that maybe didn't feel comfortable on a rating scale being able to share valued opinions.
Well, I think they're just starting the process. I don't think they were kind of in a position where they could do that process, evaluate prior to this. But there's always been conversation, and I'm like Allie, I welcome it because I don't have a problem one way or the other. I just don't have a problem with it. It's either I'm not perfect, and so I have my faults, and I'm an adult learner, and I like to learn, and I like to grow, and so I've never had a issue with it. But my treasurer is the one who initiates that process, and probably because he attaches it to increases, right? And so that's how he's faithful on it. We're going to start her evaluation process. And so, but as we move forward and looking at the concession, me leaving and them starting to develop permanent policies and procedures on how to handle this, then they do need a tool to be able to measure that.
And I think to all the board members in the room, especially serving on a board where you have terms and term limits, the continuity of performance appraisals is disrupted frequently. And to not have the executive director manage that process, but yet have consistency from year to year is something that, particularly if you're in the one of the executive roles, typically the president, but the executive role, you should inquire about. What does the evaluation process look like for the executive director, and what's the cadence for it, and who manages that, et cetera, et cetera. Being just on the board and asking the questions would be a really good question to have. And I don't know, again, I think there's lots of room for improvement in the sector in the way this happens, because the way that we're managed by boards just doesn't support consistency in the way that you just are there and you give performance appraisals for your employees, right? Having said that, my next question is, there is the moment in the year or every 6 months or whatever, where you have a conversation about performance. Can you talk a little bit about, maybe I should look at the question here. Any habits or structures that you have in place to maintain open, honest communication between your board and your executive director? Because I think that the annual performance time is one moment in time, but what really matters is the ongoing support. And one of the other questions in here, so I'm just going to attach them, is from either the board or the executive director. How do you provide ongoing support and guidance as the person that the executive director reports to, without micromanaging, talking to sort of, I went from one kind of a board to another kind of a board. But even if you're a governance board, you're still responsible for the hiring, firing, and evaluation of the executive director, even if it's more of a governance board. So how do you have these ongoing, any mechanisms or structures without then micromanaging or feeling like you're being micromanaged? I'm combining two questions there. That's a hefty question.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like our board is just an open dialogue all the time. I mean, I think that the individuals on our board are very comfortable with each other. They're not afraid to ask the tough questions. So I don't feel like there's ever any micromanagement, or that it ever has to like be forcibly initiated within our group anyway.
Yeah, I think,
I can attest to that over the last 8 years I've been on the board. There's never been a year I'm like, oh man, this is a struggle.
we do the one-on-ones, like I said, so I sit down individually with each board member every fall. And that helps to open up that dialogue to just one-on-one, which provides for a deeper relationship, I think, and I really appreciate that opportunity. And then quarterly, I give a report to the board that's more of a comprehensive kind of state of the company type report. And then we open it up for dialogue, of course, after that. So that can get lively and interesting dialogue, which is good. So I think me being proactive there too, and kind of, doing that more formal report.
Which, go ahead.
I was in with all the subcommittees,
Yeah.
We have a finance subcommittee, we have a home buyer selection subcommittee, you have the personnel subcommittee. So I think there's just enough interaction outside of the monthly board meetings that there's always an opportunity for those conversations.
And I think, no, go ahead, Sherry.
I just, being newest on the board, walking in, it's always this open conversation. I think because the board members have been there so long, they just have this rapport with one another. And the way Ms. Deb opens us up, hey, what do you need to know at every board meeting? So even coming in new, I felt very comfortable being able to ask questions and engage that way.
I think with at least the executive committee and whomever is our chair or president, it fluctuates because it's a different individual year after year, but I do tend to reach out, or they reach out to me as we're lead up to a board meeting or an executive committee meeting, and have even just a simple phone conversation, just to check in. It's not an opportunity to micromanage and ask about day-to-day things. It's just more or less hey, what's the state of things that are going on? Let's talk about the agenda a little bit as we're prepping to have an exec meeting or prepare for the board meeting in general. So I really think it's open communication. And I think even at our board meetings, I mean, maybe you can speak to this a little bit, but I mean, there's a lot of conversation that's just kind of happening, a lot of time for questions and answers and.
But I think that that's done with purpose and intent
Yeah.
from you, because there is some reporting of important things, but there's always dialogue offered, right? And there's always asking for opinions. And that doesn't always happen. I've sat on other boards where it is I'm going to get through my thing and we're going to move on to the next agenda item and move on. And that doesn't always feel great when you go to a board where there is dialogue after each segment. And then I also think this kind of goes back to the previous question, but there's a very big difference between someone that doesn't love the evaluation process, but still knows the importance of it and willingness to do it, and those that just ignore it. And sitting on previous boards that you now seeing what it's supposed to be like, and those directors that just chose not to never address it, and there weren't educated enough direct board members to be able to speak up and ask that question, what does evaluation look like? You have to have a director that knows the importance and value of being evaluated, the good and the bad, and the growth behind it, even if you don't like it and it's uncomfortable. And you do a great job of that. So it's like that, I just knowing those two things sets such a, for me, sets such a huge open opportunity for knowing that my opinion and dialogue is valued when my director's willingness to grow, even though it may not be what she wants to hear, and that doesn't happen very often, but like it's there. And there is alternatives to that. And if you haven't been on boards that aren't ran well, you don't necessarily see that.
I think for us, my board is very engaged. They're engaged in our senior program. They're engaged when we have special projects, because we have other little, like we have the Jesse Cosby Collective Choir. And so whenever we are performing anywhere, 80% of my board is there to support us. And when we're hosting anything, then my board is usually the MC, or they're really a part of it. So they're not an operations board, but they definitely are an engaged board. They can walk through the building, say hi, eat popcorn, sit down with the seniors, come upstairs, talk to people. You know, it's I don't go in panic mode because one of them is in the building. That's not what's happening. I think they're very engaged. So if things are looking shaky or they got some concern, they would never have an issue of calling me or sending me an email or saying I need to stop in the office and talk to you.
I have another question about this, but I just wanted to see, I don't know if we're getting any questions online. I'm assuming you would let me know, but just to our online audience, if you do have any questions, Angie's watching the chat, but does anyone else have any questions about the relationship between the board and the ED, especially as it relates to performance of the executive director? Yes.
I would just be interested to know how many organizations have the board requirement in their bylaws that they are responsible for the performance management of the executive director or the CEO. I mean, I know our bylaws state that clearly, that that's one of the roles of our board of directors, is to provide ongoing or annual evaluation of the CEO.
It's in ours. It's in ours.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have committee charters and it's in the executive committee charter.
Yep.
And they get to write the evaluation as well, you know, if they want to.
Can you share any examples about this, particularly to the executive directors, but maybe you were on this board or another board and have examples about how you've really supported executive directors to grow as leaders? I think that something we need to think about is just not like hire the executive to run the organization, but how do we, you know, sort of partner in leadership development in our role on the board?
My boards are very supportive of me getting furthering education. So, and like from, like, I've been to Harvard and I've been to Stanford for week-long courses, you know, so like big classes and big opportunities that might cost a little bit of money. They always are supportive of our training and conference budget being what it is. Never have questioned me on that ever, for me and the staff. So I think that, I don't know.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, is allowing her to invest in herself and her abilities, and the same with the staff, you know, when there's conferences in Atlanta and things like that. I mean, those things have value.
Yeah, and like the times when I felt like I'm burning out or I need more support, I was able to hire an executive coach for a year just to work with me one-on-one. I got to take a sabbatical because I asked for it because I needed it. I was burning out, going into 10 years, and it was exhausting. So they've been incredibly supportive of me, and I think trust me that if I ask, I need it. And
Yeah, I would say the same things about continuing education, and not only for myself, but I mean, for our team at the volunteer center, and making sure that we're all getting what we need, not only professionally in the world of what we're doing, but also some personal professional growth, that those opportunities provide too.
I think that there's a trust factor because they know that they needed to be retrained and re-educated, and that has happened for them. So whereas my counterparts here are looking to further education, I'm just looking to go to the beach.
I want to go to the beach too. Not in the car.
So that's not, but they have no problem with me offering that to staff. You know, they know that that's a weak area, and it's probably an area that staff has probably never been even afforded the luxury of having. And so that has never been questioned at all. So
Go ahead.
To her point, I think when I started and I saw the level of work that Ms. Debs puts into her role, I started advocating for her to step back and give board more leeway to do more things. And I think she would probably say I get on her a whole lot because the board can do a whole lot more to assist her so that she doesn't get burned out, because we know the beach is in our future, but we want her to still be able to get to the beach healthy, as opposed to her working herself so hard because she's atrophy built.
and that's true. She has done that, you know, but I'm probably the micromanagement in the whole building. And there's just an expectation, because I think that's when you come from a struggle and have to go through what that agency has had to go through. There's just a standard that I think we've reached and will continue to grow in. But there's a level of quality that I expect from my staff, from the programming that we provide, and I'm going to push hard to maintain that. And so, and I get my time. I mean, they'll send me home. That's why you have computers. Go home.
What I really liked is the range that is represented in this panel, right? Like this, from support for executive director to like you're supporting your board, understanding their roles and responsibilities. So really, it's just not a one size fits all. But I would say if you're in the boardroom and you're never talking about how your executive director is doing, wellness wise and skill wise, I think you're missing an opportunity to, number one, retain them, but number two, advance the mission of the organization over time in better ways. How is your ED doing? And then what can the board do in one organization? And right now, we're just talking right now, like, okay, this has been great. Now, how do we level up? What can we do next to help them? And then also, I think we're seeing in the board members being willing to also level up their skills so that they can better support the organization. I think it works both ways, right? Okay, the next one is, and I'm recognizing the time, so we'll spend as much or little time on this as we want. But I think that one of the ways that we get things done together in organizations is how many meetings we have, what do we do in our meetings, who runs them, and how they're structured, right? Not to have board meetings because the bylaws say we meet once a month. And we have an agenda and we have a template for the agenda that has been in place for 5 years. So that's the template that we use and we move through it and that's what we do. But how do we think about all of that so that, and maybe this, I'll just start with this question. How do you ensure that your board meetings have a clear purpose and isn't just a routine check-in or a meeting because the bylaws say it's time to meet?
I need an answer for this, because I will tell you
Oh.
that
Like, I'm not ready. Right?
I feel at times though that I want to utilize the time of my board members effectively. And when it comes to a point where it's like I'm putting things on the agenda, talking to the board president, thinking about the things we want to share. And it's like, yeah, I can share out all of this, but what do I need from them? What do we need to talk about? And when I'm really struggling to come up with that, it's kind of like, is this worth us getting together and having that conversation with the board president and, thinking through that? We always come up with, there's always things that we can talk about and there's always advice that needs to be done, but does it have to be with all of us together in a space, taking up an hour and a half of their time? And so, I struggle with it. I don't have the answer. I struggle at times with thinking about.
I would say at the size of our organization, there's always something going on that we need feedback. So, whether it's property acquisition, whether it's, a new, home buyer education thing, the training center, like there's always something, grant opportunity, the tax credit thing, like there's always seems like there's something that needs the board's feedback on. So I don't feel like we are in that position where it's like, we just met to meet and I feel like sometimes finance committee is that way. We meet every Monday before the board and the finance committee meets and nothing's really changed, but we still meet, still the same, past due loan, still the same cash on hand, we still meet. But the board meeting never feels that way. I respect there's always new things that need to be discussed.
And maybe it never feels that way to the board. Yeah, but just to me, it feels that way. I'm trying to be respectful.
For me, I think our board meetings are kind of like taking care of business about accountability, but we have fun. I think we like hanging out with each other for about that hour and a half.
It's because you took it from 4 hours to 1 hour. Of course it's fun.
Well, and they went from emergency meetings 2-3 times a week to we just voted in July to every other month. That's the growth. That's how far they have come, and that's been the growth, except for our finance committee, we meet every month. But we do have an agenda, and we stick to the agenda. We don't break, we don't go past it. If there's something else, then we will talk about it on the next meeting. But I think that's important that you stay focused about what it is that you need to talk about. We review the things that's important. And for them, it's the accountability of those funds that's coming in, our grant funds, and our programming. Those are our 3 areas. And so I don't think we're rigid with it, but we give accountability. And, that's how I think it's been really helpful from them. But when you come out of crisis and go into that, it's a whole different world.
But I think I'm going to state, and you might cringe when I say this, but if you're organization has an opportunity where there's really not a lot to talk about, I don't think there's anything wrong with being like, hey, there's really not anything to talk about.
Oh, we always have things to talk
Sure.
about. I just want to value
Their
my,
time,
my
sure.
people's time. And I think, do they really want to
Sure.
hear all these things? But I'm hearing, I mean, I know that there's always things for us to talk
Sure.
about. I just also don't like to do things just because we've always done them
Sure.
in a way that
Right.
we've done them. And if there's room for improvement.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always a struggle though, of like, I feel like I'm just talking head a lot of
Yeah.
the time, just like, here's what's going on, or whatever. There's a lot of reporting that's happening, but also like, when else are they gonna hear about this?
Right.
Correct.
So as long as you're open to the discussion or you're asking questions, or that people feel comfortable to jump in and ask that question, and there's there's a lot of vibrancy in the room. I mean, reporting is gonna happen. You're just gonna have to, one of the things that we've done to try to break up a little bit of that reporting is that we have a different director or department head that comes every single board meeting and gives a report on their department verbally and with a presentation, kind of updates the board themselves on kind of how their department is functioning and doing. I think that's been a great addition to it changes it up a little bit, and they're hearing directly from them, and then they can ask them direct questions. And that helps a lot. It also gives time with the board, with other staff, so they're hearing more from the people directly. And then just the cadence of every single board meeting, we're having a different staff member coming to present. That makes it interesting. And then like every quarter, I'm giving my update, so there's a little bit of a cadence of, we have personnel that gives 2 reports a year. We have, or, an update, the executive committee or so on and so forth. So finance is the thing that's standing on the committee or on the agenda every single time. And then it just depends on the time of year, what month it is for the other. So.
I think you have to look at the fact that our service delivery is different.
Yes.
The three of us.
Yeah.
And because
Very
we
different.
are more social services focused, like right now, a lot of our concern is what's happening economically.
Mhm.
How are our people going to survive not getting SNAP and food
Yeah.
stamps? That's a lot of our conversation. So, and how creative we can do to be supportive of that, and what can we do to ease up some of that. So I think the conversations in our board meetings would be totally different than what Alan what they're having.
Sure.
So it's a different,
Yeah.
you got 3 different levels of service providers.
Right. And maybe to a fault on our end is like the board doesn't get pulled into more of that higher level strategy type thinking all the time about what the sector is doing and, that kind of stuff as much. We try to do now we're doing a half day retreat once a year just to pull them into strategy more, but yeah.
And so my next question was, where and when and how often do you have strategic conversations if it's not in your board meetings? Right? Where does that strategy, the responsibility of the board on strategy happen? So it is in addition to.
It's also very organic, I think, in our board meetings.
Yeah.
We'll go there, but like more topical or what's kind of going on, but
We have, we
but
have
we have a
quarterly strategic planning because we contract out with
Okay.
Midwest Studies. So
Mhm.
we have a three-year plan, and we're into our beginning of our 3rd year. So we review those. We have our strategic plans on the table at every board meeting, and it meets with us every quarter.
Okay.
So it's very right there for us. It's front and center. So.
I just want to there was just a comment in the chat that was just about, from Michaela Vandersee about that they use time in their meetings to have a staff member come in and educate the board about their role. You guys can probably read it from there, but challenges they face in a meaningful moment. And she just mentioned that helps educate the board about services and grows their ability to be advocates. And then that they also have an educational moment each month regarding regulations and/or changes, and the impact of that and what kind of advocacy they may need from the board around that.
Does anyone else have any questions related to this or anything that is on your mind that wasn't addressed today? Yes.
I'm just curious if you had any other ways that staff directly talk to the board, other than, we mentioned the presentations at board meetings directly from their departments or whatever, but any other ways that happens?
We do a grill out every year with all the employees and
board members.
And the holiday open house. So we have 2 things a year intentionally that are board and staff together.
And the annual fundraiser too, I guess.
Yeah, just events and
Spring
stuff like
benefit.
that, like and then board, like different staff run different committees, so they have board members sitting on those committees too, so they have their own connections. My bigger fear, honestly, is that there's too many staff members that are individually reaching out to board members because I think there's a lot of access. People just don't feel that there's a boundary there in our organization, not in a bad way, but in a good way. But then you kind of get, I think board members have the risk of being flooded with, who is this staff member again? And what are they asking me for? You know, like a little bit of that.
And our staff attends our board meetings, and not only to help support with the providing of education, we have an accountability report timeline, but I also think we're such a small entity that it's important that they're there to really be a part of those conversations and provide that support. And really, so, it's coming from all of us as a team versus just me reporting out on what they're doing. I want to give them the opportunity to share the successes that they're having.
We have planned activities with the board. We have 2 activities. We have our annual barbecue, and then we have our annual funders appreciation luncheon in November, that the board, the seniors, and the staff all sit down, and our funders come and have lunch together. And we're in a small building, so upstairs is our crisis services, downstairs is our senior activity. So you're not gonna go nowhere in the building where you're not gonna run into somebody. But I think it's just real. The board has said to staff, we can have this dialogue, we can do all of this, but when it comes to the running and decision-making of this center, you have to respect her and go to her first.
Any other questions? All right, this is your last moment and you have to we'll just go down the line, right? So you can, this is your last moment to have inspiring words. What inspired you to serve on a board that would motivate others to think about this, or what advice would you have for new board members? We'll kind of bring it full circle. We started there as well.
I think when I've been on a board in the past, it's been, do I really connect to this? Like what Scott was talking about, passionate. If I wasn't passionate about it, then I wouldn't be an effective board member. So do I really have the time to commit, the heart to commit? Do I have the capacity in a lot of different ways to commit to this? And if not, then it's just not the right time and don't do it. And definitely, like, is my heart in it for the right reason? That's what I ask of all of our board members to ask themselves. And certainly when I'm looking for a new board member is, like he was saying, like, I'm not interested in resume builders and they're out there everywhere. It's like, I need somebody that's really going to care about this and is going to be a good thinker and come on this journey with us. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but yeah.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I mean, obviously Habitat for Me is a good fit. I grew up in a small town in Iowa. A lot of my friends, their families didn't own their homes, they rented. Affordable housing is a very, very tough thing right now. And it's just something I'm very passionate about. So it's easy for me to advocate for something that I wholeheartedly believe in. And like she said, don't let your donors push you into putting, employees and things on your board just because they write you a check, because you're going to get people that aren't going to bring you any value.
Yeah.
I think, as Deborah said, it is an honor to serve on boards, and I truly think that about the boards that I have the opportunity to be a part of. And so it feels like I'm making a true difference in the community, and I hope that and it's a variety of board opportunities that I've had. And so I feel like I learned something new about our community. I get the chance to meet new people, but more than that, it's just that I either have or am able to develop how I can bring my talents and be a part of those conversations and feel like I'm making a difference and creating a really good place to be. But it does feel like an honor. Good word.
I can't really hit on anything more than what they've done. So I guess I would take it from the lens of, like I'm a firm believer in true servant leadership and looking at working with youth on a daily basis. I think there's no better way to uphold that than lead by example. And I truly believe, like, maybe not everybody in here, especially if you have teenagers right now, like this generation are destined to do amazing things, but they have to find connection and belief in it. And I think that if we can connect them to all the amazing opportunities, and instead of telling them what they have to do and rather showing them the opportunity that they have to do it, they will take it and run with it. And so, like, just being a part of Lauren's is like inspired me to lead our volunteer group at the high school. And I think seeing it through their eyes gives me more purpose to be involved in boards, and hopefully kind of push this generation to continue to do that.
My whole career has been human services, and Waterloo is my home. This is my community. And so naturally, I'm about giving back. And so when I think about me being able to sit on the board and make decisions that's going to have a positive impact in people's lives, then I'm going to do that. I don't have time to waste. And I'm not looking to write a resume. So I value my time, but I also value what's happening in this community. I'm going to say we have some wonderful nonprofits here, and I love being a part of this nonprofit community because we do not silo ourselves. We really are working together to improve this community. And so I sit on maybe three boards, and if I feel like I'm going to miss either one or two, then I'm going to have a conversation about what am I being value added at boards. So yeah, I like meeting people.
For me, I have a servant's heart and I always want to give back. It's just how I've always been. But also in my past, I've been involved in volunteer management. So I also understand the importance of volunteers and what they bring to an organization. You can't pay for it. And so when I moved here, I was looking for opportunities to get involved in the community that I now live in. And so when I was invited, I had said no because there were so many asks of me to serve. And I wanted to make sure I found an organization or a position that I felt I could really lend my talent and my service to, and a mission I believed in, also serving the underserved population that I have been a part of my whole life. So that was my reason.
I think it's important when you sit down and visit with your potential board member that you need to ask them the question, why are you doing this? Because if they give you a surface answer, that's probably not who you want on your board. I need to hear passion. I need to know that you're passionate about what it is that we're doing, that you're passionate about this community. And so that in itself, because just like you can say, no, you don't want to be on my board, I can say, no, I don't want you on my board. So, it's a two-way street. But I think when we realize that we have options about how we move forward in our organizations, and who we want around the table making decisions about our community, then we'll start to be better at our board development and what it is that we're wanting from this community and the people that are serving us and when we serve you all. So
Will you please help me in thanking our panelists today for opening up three shameless plugs because I can. Maybe. You shut off my power. Just the next slide. So our Office of Community Engagement at UNI partners with the Volunteer Center of Cedar Valley in many, many, many ways every day. But one of them is we help individuals find a board that connects with their values and what they care about. I will say we placed someone on the Jesse Cosby Neighborhood Center board. She then moved out of the area but after being on that board, emailed me and said, thank you so much. This is such a perfect fit. And I just said to Deborah, was it a perfect fit? So anyway, just know if you're an organization looking for a new board member or an individual looking to serve on a board, we can help connect to that, right? So you can scan that and it will get you there. I also have brochures in the back to any of you who would be interested. We do have a master's degree in philanthropy and nonprofit development. It is online, so if we have anyone still online, you can engage in this program from anywhere in the country. And then I will also just share that UNI is celebrating our sesquicentennial. We kicked off our 150th year in class this past fall. And as a part of that celebration, throughout the spring, we're serving and giving back. And on April 8th, the UNI community will be volunteering in the Cedar Valley and surrounding areas. And so if you have ways that you think we can support your mission and what you're doing in your nonprofit organizations, there are cards as you leave and QR codes there. You can get to the board match program and to submit a volunteer opportunity. And I will leave it with there, and I'll be here if you have any questions. So thank you very much for having me
Well,
today.
and thank you to Dr. Gass. It's a couple minutes over, so I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna say it in a couple sentences, okay? First of all, I'm going to email you all with an online evaluation. If you could take a few minutes to complete that and give some feedback, because that helps us shape future topics and the direction of our board fundamentals program here. I also have some additional kind of upcoming, definitely upcoming events through the Cedar Valley Nonprofit Association, particularly around building advocacy skills that I think would be great for both board members and staff members. I won't go into that too much right now. We also have a fun launch party in January focused on how nonprofits get it done. So really celebrating the work of our nonprofits in the Cedar Valley. I will put that into the email. I will also put the items that she shared into the email. So it's going to be some links and some information. And so anything that you saw there, and then more of the information about the upcoming CFNEIA programs, I will put there as well. And our next board fundamental session will be in June of 2026.